Well, good morning.
Good morning.
When's the last time you had two pastors preaching at the same time? Pretty good time.
This is a first for me, too, if you can believe it, with all the experimenting and campus ministry we do. I thought we could bring it here to Westland, and it's really wonderful to be with you today. And thank you, Pastor John, for inviting me. You know, I've been thinking about this passage in Luke quite a bit, in part because we had a huge amount of mulch delivered to Luther House, like the size of a car, maybe 8 or 9 yards of it, and it was sitting in the driveway for quite some time. And we have been waiting for this truck of mulch to arrive, and it arrived right during finals week, so perfect timing. And really good timing, too, because we were anticipating a tree planting with students during that week to celebrate summer. This passage resonates for me in a couple ways because one of the key words in my call process was actually fallow for the campus ministry. And I know it's a strange thing to describe a ministry site and a ministry community as fallow, but I think there was a gift in that word. That after COVID and lots of pastoral transitions, there was a quieter state in that campus ministry. And I think it's been a good reminder in this year or so that I've been there to think about the parable and moving lots of mulch and the abundance that comes in God's overwhelming blessings of care and time and patience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Time and patience. I'm a little loud right now. That's good. Don't even have to really project much. There we go. Time and patience. That's what Luke's gardener in the story of the parable asks for. Patience over the course of a year's time. Don't be too hasty. Just give us some time. Let's see how this can play out with this apple or fig tree, depending on which version you have. It's kind of jaw-dropping what God can do in just 1 year. Personally, I think about where I was 1 year ago. I was actually finishing up my parental leave time after Theodore was born. What about you, Pastor Hallie?
About a year ago, I was 5 months pregnant, anticipating that new life in my own family and at Luther House.
Yeah, definitely. So time and patience, really amazing things where we can go with a little time, a little patience. The other thing about it a year ago was that I was just starting to dream of what it might perhaps look like for me to stand in this very place. Who would have known what we would have been, what happened really, that we would be here right now, a year from a year ago, and standing as classmates, getting to share some ministry and a message together, and really blooming into our second calls of our ministries, transplanting our respective families to a relatively unknown but rich soils of Oregon to see what God might grow here. That transplanting aspect is all the more familiar with the students who enter college after uprooting themselves from their high school communities.
Mm-hmm. And we know that campus ministry is vital for these students, but it's also vital for the church itself. I'm going to throw a statistic at you that 75% of incoming seminary candidates have either camp ministry or campus ministry experience in their whole faith journey, or in your pastor's case, both.
And we get to be sending off some students off to camp today. So we're going over to Camp Lutherwood. So continuing that tradition. Who knows where they'll go?
Yeah. I think these places like camp ministries and campus ministries are an important piece of sanctuary that hold people through these threshold times. And the young people, as they explore all sorts of different facets of their identities and as they launch into who they are in this world. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Pastor John has firsthand experience of this.
Yeah. So, I've told some of you, some were on the call committee and heard a little bit of this story, but campus ministry really was not just a passive experience in my life. It's something that really helped for me, really helped give me the support and the sanctuary place where I could feel safe and ask questions, whether it was just through my college time, but also into starting to think about seminary, think about becoming a pastor and what that might look like. And so, as soon as I got to college, I knew that that was something that I wanted to do, was get involved with the college church. Didn't exactly know what that looked like at that point, but I started wandering around the Commons area, saw the Methodist table for the Methodist campus music. That's good. There's the Catholics over there. Where are the Lutherans? They gotta be around here somewhere, right? Just kept walking around the corner. There they were, and just some good folks sitting in August in Phoenix area, outside, potentially 115 degrees, because they were there to welcome the new folks to be part of the community. I ended up living with one of those guys down the road in a really awesome cohabitation, big house full of people, really good cooks. I was not that good cook. I was the person who washed the dishes. It was a good trade-off. I met my wife in campus ministry and got connected there. And you just make friends and relationships that continue on through the rest of your life in places like campus or camping ministry.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that you mentioned the mealtime, because every Sunday night during the academic term, we have a Sunday night meal at Luther House. And I have to admit, I invited our board chair to come at one of those Sunday meal times to share about the God of Sunday school that his teachers, when he was growing up, made the mistake of teaching him about the radical ministry of Jesus. And with this student group, I opened the icebreaker of what brings you around the table. And one of my students said that the dinners were his Sabbath time, like a time when he could take a breath and stop doing all the homework and work and the bajillion extracurriculars he was a part of. He said the dinner was his time to just be in relationship with others around the table and with God. And then I have to admit that another Luther House student said he was there for the free food, and that his mom told him to come to Luther House, which is not the only one who comes, if you can believe it. So this term, I asked students if they could describe Luther House in one word. And that student who told me he was there because of the free food and because his mom told him to come said it's a place where life moves at a slower pace than the rest of campus. And it's a place where I can study and have friends over to play games. And he also said that Jesus calls us to live in community and serve one another. And Luther House is as close to a manner of a community as I have found. And then other students have described it as like engaging, where they could use a different part of their brains that are usually caught up with like vector calculus and conversations with those engineering boys.
Vector calculus, anyone?
No, me either. And another person described it as a place that they realized they had a religion-sized knife in their back. And she described Luther House as a place where she became aware of the religious trauma she carried. And I saw her the other day pick up the Queer Bible Commentary on our band bookshelf and read the entire chapter on Leviticus. So that was pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. There's so much in that campus community where people find life. And it's more than grades and graduation and vector calculus or, public speaking class as a core, and where the purposes of those higher education pieces unfold in a bigger way that are part of like this home life and sanctuary life and a great calling in the world.
Yeah, all these callings or vocations, things that we do in response to where God calls us, right? And Martin Luther, we're Lutherans here. We have Luther House, after all. We center some of our being around some of the teachings of Luther. Luther took a really big radical leap in understanding vocations. We've got our work, we've got our vocations. And Luther understood this as something that we do and we are called into right from the beginning in our baptism, right from birth, really. And this was holy work, and it was not just limited to the priests or the bishops or the pope or the pastors. Luther understood this vocation as not limited to those vocational tracks, that God called all kinds of people into valuable work and being of a whole person. Luther said, a cobbler, a smith, a day worker, each has the work and office of his trade, and yet they are all alike consecrated, priests and bishops. Further, everyone must benefit and serve every other by means of his own work or office, so that in this way, many kinds of work may be done for the bodily and spiritual welfare of the community, just as all the members of the body serve one another. So bringing this thing of saying, look, the previous model where the priests and bishops and clergy, they were the pinnacle. And really, let's change that model. Let's change it to where there's not a pyramid. There's Christ at the middle. And we are all so amazingly blessed to be surrounded by other people who are having Jesus at the middle. There's a different, actually a Greek proverb that kind of ties into our gospel today. It made me think of it. The proverb says, a society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they know they shall never sit. A society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they know they shall never sit. So that's really saying doing something without reward. Doing something because it's the right thing to do. Doing something for the longevity of your people, of your faith, of your community. And then fast forward a couple thousand years to Bishop Oscar Romero saying, we may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. In other words, you may never see the fruit of your efforts, but we trust in God, the master builder, to see us through to the ultimate goal, even through generations and generations, the completion of the building and the harvest of the goals and what God sets out for us.
So I really only get to see these students for 4 years if I'm lucky to be part of that faith journey for their time in campus life. But I hope and I believe that it is a place that they encounter the sacred and then go out and seek those communities that are part of it and get to launch them into the world afterwards too. And I hope it is a place that even if they can't wake up on Sunday mornings and get themselves to church, that they still find a place of the sacred in their lives. Yeah.
Being somebody who actually lived at a campus ministry, even then it wasn't always easy to wake up for Sunday mornings.
I think this is part of that Sunday school Jesus and fleshing the stories, making them real. And a piece of that for me, as we were spreading mulch, a lot of mulch, we took a break to plant fruit trees in the garden of Luther House. And with students, we took time to share poetry for the trees and blessings of hope for this summer, but also for people's lives. And I shared this story of the barren fig tree, the barren apple tree, and that big pile of mulch. And one of my environmental science students said, maybe the gardener could have pruned it differently. Maybe the gardener could have planted a companion to help cross-pollinate. They're all the ways this story opens up in the imagination of environmental science students.
And it's not something necessarily that you think of, the tying in of these Bible stories, even the holiest of the gospel stories, in with environmental science or vector calculus. But it does in wonderful and amazing ways, because this is a living word that we are reading and celebrating and hearing and digesting together, like the fruit that's talked about there. And the funny thing with those cross-pollination or the fruit trees, you can have the exact same varietal, so the exact same, you could take the seed off of one tree, two of them, and plant them in two different places, and it could be a fig, a grape, or an apple, and plant it in two different places on the globe, and it would create drastically different fruit. They have the same makeup, they have the same potential held within them. But a heat wave may introduce more of a tropical profile. A cold snap at just the right time of the development can help halt the process of creating sugars that might make it overripen or fall off too soon. Even traumatic storms, which may do damage, can, given the right care and healing attention, produce something even more resilient and uniquely suited to the future unknown storms. Who knows what those fruit trees at OSU Luther House will bear? Who knows what will be done or discovered or innovated by the students entering OSU and Luther House and all the other campus ministries out there? God only knows for sure, because we are not called to know with certainty, as we heard in Job. God was there at the very beginning laying out the framework of the universe. It's not our vocation, not our job to know, but it is our job to instead hear Jesus giving us this parable to perhaps, like the apple fig tree, dig around these students and add some new rich soil and mulch, some with some nutrients to absorb, some space to grow, and air to breathe.
And bearing with that tree metaphor one more time, one of my students at that tree planting shared his favorite quote by Martin Luther. It goes something like, "If the world were to end tomorrow, I'd plant an apple tree." And I think as we bear that hope for campus ministry as the church together for generations upon generations, that we hope for the life of the church to take up root again and again. And for that, thanks be to God.
Amen.
Amen.